This is Chef's Thoughts, and we're talking about tools today. So, basic tools. You always need your nippers, hobby knife, something to sand with, be sanding paper, or sanding sponges, or sanding sticks. And those are the basics. That's all you really need to start out with. But I hear a lot of customers get wrapped up over their nippers. I mean, the worst case would be that you're cutting with nail clippers. But the other extreme is you go out and buy some $80 God hands off of Amazon. So let's find that happy medium in there. You don't need to go all out. You don't need the fanciest thing that you think, the best modelers in the world are using. Because trust me, if you were wearing LeBron James shoes, but he's wearing flip-flops, he would still beat you in basketball. It's not about the shoes, even though Spike Lee said that several years ago.
Money's gotta be the shoes.
So I've never got to use a God hands, but I watched a couple of reviews from some pretty trusted YouTubers that you guys, I'm sure, watch too. And all of them pretty much came to the same conclusion. Yeah, they're sharp, but they're probably not worth plus $50, which by the time you get in the US, you're usually looking at about $50 plus dollars, 60, 70, 80, even on Amazon sometimes. So what you're looking at is a nipper that was made for nails that was found out by some modeler and they loved it and they started using them for modeling, and then they started marketing them towards modelers. But they only have the sharp blade on one side, which gives you a slightly angled cut, and if you're trying to cut it right up against the plastic, you're always going to have that slight angle to your final cut. So in that case, you might as well just go the correct way, which is not cutting right up against your final part, but cutting along the gate and then another closer cut, and then come in with your tool to get rid of the final gate mark, which is the proper way to do it. If you watch Master Kawaguchi, which you can find him on Gundam Info, he's actually Bandai's official master builder who builds a lot of the models for the boxes. If you look him up, Gundam Info has the videos, look him up, and you will see the proper way to cut, which is a cut off the gate, and I'll show you the difference between a gate, sprue, and runner. So he'll cut it from the gate, and then he'll do a closer cut right up near the final piece, but not on it. And the reason you don't want to cut right up on the piece is A, you either get one of those stress marks, or B, the worst case scenario, you'll gouge the part, and then you're going to have to putty it in. Now, if you're going to paint it in the long run, yeah, I guess that doesn't really matter because you could easily putty that little mistake up. And if it's just a stress mark, it's going to get painted over, so it won't be a big deal. But if you're not into the stages of painting yet, you definitely want some nice clean cuts. So leave yourself a little bit, and then we're going to talk about my favorite tool, the knife. I will show you how to use these properly to get super close, usually in one try. And you want to do any extra sanding or anything, you'll hit it once and you'll be done. So let's get to it.
Alright, so here's a piece I just cut out, and I wanted to start out by showing you what I see most beginners doing with the knife. They usually will just use all the force to cut down onto the piece that they need to cut away. And on a rounded piece, this is going to take a couple cuts. Comes out okay, not too bad, just a little bit of cleanup, but you will have a problem with stress marks. Now we'll look at how to cut out a piece properly. I really don't worry about cutting from the back, I'm just doing it for the camera's sake. But I definitely leave plenty of space on the gate. Instead of going in for a closer cut with the nippers, I'm just going to go straight to the knife. I put about 10% of the pressure against the piece, 10% against the part cutting, and the other 80% is in the forward motion. This gives you a very controlled cut, like a slice, much like carving turkey at Thanksgiving. You never see anybody cut meat just by forcing the knife blade straight down. And if your knife blade is sharp, it will slide right through the plastic like butter. Notice the motions forward. This also makes it a lot safer when cutting because you don't have to worry about the blade flying at the angle you're cutting with. You know it's going to go forward. Most of the pressure will go forward. Most of these cuts are coming out nice and neat, requiring no sanding. Towards the end here, I have to touch up just a little bit. Hit a couple extra cuts on that one. Another great tool, of course, is your hands. Use those nails to clean stuff up, buff out with your fingers. Your hands can be a blessing or disastrous when dealing with paint before it's completely dry. Now here I'm just touching another piece up, still using that same motion of going forward. Because of that little bit of edge, beveled edge at the bottom of the piece, I had to cut towards the bottom. Now you can take a look, very clean, no stress marks, no sanding required. Now I don't know what was going on, if it's because I was doing rounded pieces first, but I had a little bit of trouble with these flat pieces that I usually don't have. I might have just been trying to cut at angles I'm not used to cutting with the camera. But again, still using that forward motion. Now I'm sure most of you guys know when using a knife you should never cut towards yourself. And though it looks like on some of these cuts I might be cutting towards my fingers, remember the action's going forward, so that bottom finger is safe. Another great tip with using the hobby knife a lot, if you've been working on cleaning up pieces for a long time and your attention's starting to fade, just put it down, stop, come back to it. Make sure you're focused, because that's when you'll make the mistake, is when you lose focus. So I also like, since I'm not having to use a cutting mat to make my cuts, I can hold the piece in several different angles. Usually when I'm cutting pieces, I hold it really close to my face so I can see exactly what I'm doing. But of course here I'm doing it for the camera, so it was a little harder for me. Again, using that nail, see what's not flat, see if I can just scratch it flat. Now here, it definitely looks like I'm going right at my fingers, but that's my nail protecting me, so I'm not worried at all. So these weren't perfect. Had to hit them with a little bit of sandpaper, but they cleaned up well. This was about 2000 grit sandpaper, I believe. I like to use this when I'm trying to get back to a nice buffed surface. And as you can see, even with a few mistakes, still came out looking pretty good. So last takeaway with the knife, always make sure you're paying attention to the angles you're cutting at so you don't cut yourself. Remember, at least 70 to 80% of the pressure needs to be going forward, so you're slicing through, not hacking, not cutting, you're just slicing through the piece. And with that, you'll have clean results majority of the time. And using the surface to guide you, you will prevent divots. That's all for Chef's Thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.